Hello, everyone. We are back. Another episode, somehow, of Geeks and Barbells, talking about anime. We are going to discuss Gleipnir, which has been out for a little while, but is actually probably one of the more newer anime that I have decided to review these days. I tend to be more focused on the old school anime, kind of build myself up, but I caught on to Gleipnir maybe about a week ago, blew through it, and I've got some stuff to say, some little things, some little quotations. I don't know what I'm saying, actually. Sometimes I wonder if my brain is connected to my mouth or to the ether. Ether? Ether? I've always been slightly confused on that also. Aether and then Ether. Ether? Ether? Aether? It's written differently in fantasy books, sometimes in Final Fantasy games. So many conflicting information. So much conflicting. I really can't speak today. It's over, people. It's over. We're going to close this down. But no, first, we must finish this. I don't even want to call it a review. Is it a review? Ponderings. That's what it is on Gleipnir. Because Gleipnir is interesting. It is an interesting take of the conflicting sides that exist within the anime community at this point. Because on one side, from a, we will say, cinematic, from a visual, from an illustrative perspective, Gleipnir is one of the nicest anime I have seen in quite a while. It has such beautiful use of color within it, and many of the themes in the anime are dealing with, we'll say, more serious concepts. There's a lot of violence within the show. There is a lot of, unfortunately, sexual innuendo, but they managed to navigate through that with these really beautiful color palettes. Everything is especially well drawn, and the combat scenes they're just fantastic. When they happen, they go balls to the wall. It is done so well that I was just super impressed. To the first battle scene within the second episode, to one of the final battle scenes at the end of the series, it really just keeps a top-notch quality, and there's, we will say, a level of detail to the combat that really captivates you. And this is obviously something that is portrayed through the general storyline, which is that there is these, let's face it, generally younger kids, although there are some adults, these generally younger kids who have received this ability to transform into monsters of varying shapes, sizes, and with differing abilities. And our main character, Shuichi, is able to transform into, we will say, a gigantic furry dog sort of toy. And to add to it, he's able to be entered, to be used sort of like a costume. And he does that in a sort of symbiotic relationship with this girl, Claire, who is, for all intents and purposes, it's not really discussed, but she seems to have some combat experience. She knows how to fight. And Shuichi does not. He is just the vehicle, the powerhouse that is allowing Claire to fight in these battles. Although he does sometimes fight on his own, he's just not that skilled, and he's also mentally not the kind of person who is interested in combat and harming people. And so his sort of symbiosis with Claire allows him to be, I don't want to say dominant because he does get his ass whooped sometimes, but he allows him to kind of push past his own kind of mental deficiencies, we'll say, in the combat arena. And the show really showcases that well. When it comes to Shuichi's issues with violence and his slow development over the course of the 13 episode series, you really get a feel for that kind of focus. That's one of the things that they highlight really well. The combat, the feel of it, the aspects and nature of what it means to be violent, to hurt people, what it is to be monstrous in a certain sense, whether you're human or someone with these abilities. And so they kind of do focus on those, it kind of comes to light. There's a big central focus on Claire and her ability to do violence, to hurt people, and not really seem to care about it, which isn't really normal for most of even the other monsters that they meet, the other people. Most of them have issues with violence, or at least are not that comfortable with it, except for the main enemies that they meet. So that's kind of something they do well in the series, the general themes of violence and discovering violence and kind of talking about violence. In most other cases, though, this series falls short, and this is the issues really that seem to be happening in a lot of anime these days. It's kind of a real hyper focus on combat and fighting, but whenever they try to sort of develop storyline on the other sides, it is scattered. It is unsure of itself. Now, again, this is still the first season. It's possible that Gleipnir will develop into something much more beautiful later on. And from what I've heard online, it seems like the story does get fantastic in the manga. So I do have my fingers crossed in that sense. But for someone just coming into it with a full focus on the anime only, and only seeing that first season, they really don't seem to know what the hell they're doing. There are so many things that are not explained properly or well. And even if you were to say, well, we're going to find out later, the way they develop it, the way they go at it is just way too scattered. And then all of a sudden, this kind of information nuggets are dropped on you, but they don't really make much sense. Shuichi, Claire, and their entire relationship related to Claire's sister and what Claire's sister has done, and Shuichi's background, and the things that he has lost, and the confusion and trying to understand what has happened to him and what is happening to all these other people who are involved and becoming these creatures and monsters. This sort of strange sci-fi element, which, again, it is possible that the sci-fi alien element of this show is a ruse, that it's not true. I mean, it's very possible that this thing is a magical creature, it is something else, and it is not an alien as it says, or perhaps it is. Again, there's really not much shown or portrayed or explained in that sense. So the kind of central background of the story, the whole source of everything, and the why other people are doing this is completely tossed over. It's just completely ignored. No one really asks any questions like you think they would. So that kind of doesn't motivate you. The central focus on Claire's sister Elena and the problems that she has developed within this world, this monster world, again, not explained. So the way Claire and Shuichi meet is that Claire supposedly had her family killed by her sister, who's one of these monsters. And that's not ever really explained, not properly. And the conflicting information, the back and forth, again, it's possible it's going to get answered in season 2, but I really don't think they handled it very well. They kept going back and forth. It's as though they would sort of advance the story a little bit and then take 2 steps back and then focus on things that didn't really develop much of anything, didn't really point to anything. They added in and threw in new characters that didn't serve any real purpose. The groups that Claire and Shuichi get involved with, they don't do anything. They don't go anywhere. There's episodes spent on them that just kind of fall through and, again, don't develop the main story to any degree, shape, or form. You would hope that they would sort of develop the character of Shuichi and Claire, but what happens to Claire and Shuichi could have been done in like 1 episode and could have been explained much more efficiently. Instead, they just waste time. As I said before, there's a lot of sexual innuendo in the show, which I am actually not as bothered by in this series, because unlike many other series that rely on ecchi and sexuality, at the very least, the sexuality in here, even though the main character is shy and it's not really going anywhere, it's sexuality that makes sense. There's not this random shyness, like everyone's awkward and it's weird. It's just really young people, and one of them is very sexual, and there's that normal kind of discomfort that a younger person would have. And so I'm not so bothered by it as I am by many other anime that instead just constantly fan service with big boobs and big ass, and it's just awkward and makes no sense. But in this series, one issue with the fan service is that it happens too much. There's so much fan service by the main character Claire and others that it detracts from the seriousness of a moment. You have like violence and bloodiness and this focal point of all these monstrous things happening, and then all of a sudden she's doing sexual things for no apparent reason, shape, or form. And again, it doesn't bother as much as other anime does, but again, nothing is really being furthered by it. There's no plot development. It doesn't go along with her character. And also, it's not explained. I haven't fully looked it up, but I'm pretty sure Claire is supposed to be pretty damn young in this series. So that's kind of uncomfortable. I think she might be like 14, 15. Again, Japanese have this real obsession with that age group. So why a girl that young knows how to fight the way she does and is that sexual? You could say she's kind of lost it because she saw her sister as a monster and her parents have been killed, but that was 6 months ago. You don't just go through this transition of becoming a psychopath just because your parents died 6 months before. And Claire is very much one of the most confusing characters I've ever seen. She really is slightly psychotic, and there's no kind of discussion of it in the show. Shuichi knows something's kind of off about her, but again, it's not explored. Why is she the way she is? Has she always been like this? You know, it is quite confusing to the degree that it is pushed into the show, because pretty much almost every episode has this fan servicey sexuality thing happening between Claire and Shuichi, but it serves no real purpose except to detract from it. And they try to push this relationship between the two, but again, it doesn't go anywhere. It just ends up being kind of vague. And that is really this series' main problem at this point. I think it is very possible that if we get a second and especially a third season and they really kind of delve more into the stories and questions are more properly developed and answered and characters are fleshed out, there is a really, really good chance this anime could be very great in the later seasons. But as of this moment, it's just they tried to do too many things, didn't answer much of anything, just ended up being kind of like, okay, who is the enemy? What is happening? Is Shuichi changing, or is he just kind of like taking one step forward, two steps back, one step forward, two steps back? What's happening with him? How do these powers work? What is happening with these monsters? You know, there's just not a kind of sure, stable footing for the anime to advance forward. But I think that, as I said before, the combat is so fantastic. It's such an interesting way that they use the monster powers and how they transition back and forth between their human form and how they maintain certain abilities and then they become stronger after. I think they really have a potential to do something really cool with that. And the season one, I mean, it's short enough. It's 13 episodes that you can kind of blow through it and just really enjoy how cool the fight scenes are, because they were really, really nice looking. So I would check it out. I would say that on a scale of 1 to 10, I would still give this an 8, simply because of the potential I see it having for the later seasons. If it does get one, hopefully cross our fingers. But if it doesn't get a season 2, unfortunately, I would probably give this like a 6, because it doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. We will see what happens. Let me know what you think down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out the website, geeksandbarbos.com. And let me know if you know if there's going to be a season 2, because I've looked online, I haven't seen the announcement yet. So if you know, let me know. Bye, everyone.